for Michael Drew Schofield. I'm Bishop Mackey from the Apple Farms Ward in West Valley. Brother and sister Schofield Bishop, I'll be conducting today. I'd like to thank Brother Bryce Schofield for giving the family prayer, and Sister Blake and Emmy Schofield for the music today. We'll now have our opening hymn, a congregational hymn, I Lived in Heaven. Afterwards, our invocation will be by Bailey Perez.
Our dear Heavenly Father, we thank Thee so much for this day and that we all were able to come here and celebrate my grandpa's great life and who he became to be. We're so grateful that he chose to be in this church and that we get to see him again. And we think that we have so many friends and family that love him dearly. And we ask you that love of the Spirit as we hear this program today, and ask that everyone will feel that he's here. In the name of Jesus Christ, amen.
Thank you. We will now have the reading of the obituary by Karen Schofield, who's a daughter-in-law. Afterwards, our first speaker will be Bryce Schofield, son, which will be followed by Summer Spinello. Vanilla, okay. A daughter, and we'll go to that point.
Michael Drew Schofield, born September 1st, 1952, in Salt Lake City, Utah, to Edgar Samuel Schofield and Ellen Mark Clough, passed away on February 3rd, 2021, of pancreatic cancer. Mike's take on cancer was, it's like a box of chocolate. You never know what you're gonna get. He was raised by his mom and stepdad, Wayne Lazar, in Lake Point, Utah. He married Deborah Gollier on June 15, 1973, in the Salt Lake Temple, and were blessed with 4 fabulous children: Christopher, Danielle, Summer, and Bryce. Mike and Deb had 16 fantastic grandchildren. For many years, Mike, along with his stepfather, ran a meat business in Lake Point. Mike fed, watered, cleaned, pelted, and cared for up to as many as 1,500 mink and their kids. After demand for mink declined, the family sold the business in 1974. During summer breaks in high school, Mike was employed at the Tuelle smelter, working on the slag line. After high school, he attended a 2-year electronics technical school in Phoenix, Arizona, and began working as a copier repairman for A.B. Dick. Later in his career, he was hired by Heidelberg to repair and install large Heidelberg printing presses, stall paper cutters, and bindery equipment. Mike and Deb lived in Lake Point until 2003. When Heidelberg transferred Mike to their Kenosha, Georgia headquarters, where they lived until 2007. Mike and Deb then moved back to Utah. Mike retired from Heidelberg in 2013 and started his own company, Wasatch Graph Tech, servicing and installing the same printers and cutters that he had worked for over 35 years. Mike served his community as a volunteer firefighter EMT and eventually captain of the Lake Point Fire Station. His fellow volunteer EMTs and firefighters traveled many miles and helped many people in need along the I-80 freeway and sometimes almost went over in Tuella County. He also served in the Boy Scouts and in 1993 attended Wood Badge training and completed all requirements. Mike inherited his wonderful singing voice from his mother, and he sang in many church choirs, as well as a production of The Messiah. He took guitar lessons and was proficient with 6 and 12-string guitars, enjoying many hours of practicing, playing, and singing with Lake Point friends. Learning carpentry from his stepfather and metalworking from high school, Mike remodeled his 70-year-old home. He then built his own workshops where he created and repaired many machine parts for his customers by hand. He was also a very skilled woodworker. Mike served in many positions in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. His favorite calling was that of ward clerk. He also served as a counselor in the bishopric of the Redwood Ward, maintaining dear friendships with whom he served. Mike leaves behind many family members, friends, and customers who he loved and enjoyed being around. Mike is preceded in death by his mother Helen, stepfather Wayne Lazar, stepbrother Gary Lazar, and sister Raylene Martinez. The family would like to thank the doctors, physicians, assistants, and nurses at Utah Cancer Specialists for the loving care they provided Mike over the past 2 years. Thank you.
thank everybody for coming out, supporting my family, and supporting the life of my father. And it's great to see many people out here, and to see that my father had a very big impact in people's lives. And it's great to see, like I said, the support. So thank you for coming out. Thank you. And one of the things that I've wondered, or one of the things that I recently thought about in the past couple of days is who my father was. You know, there's a lot of characteristics that we can name and address. One of the things that I was thinking about the other day was, well, during my time with my family, the kids had wildcrats. I don't know if you guys know wildcrats. It's like an animal educational science. Two guys hanging out, going into it's a cartoon, and you know, these guys are going on adventures, learning about animals and deep sea and things like that. It's really interesting. But I was sitting there wondering what I should think, what kind of characteristics I can talk about from my father, and my littlest one is climbing on me, and I thought, well, what can I think of? And really, it came across as the word devotion. And my father was very devoted. Actually, I thought of the word dedicated. Actually, first it was dedicated, and then it went a little deeper. But to go through this, why I decided dedication was something that came to mind about my father. And excuse me, I was on the wrong page. Sorry. Dedication. I thought my father was. I see it in my father's work. My father was very dedicated in his work. Never took a sick day, I swear. And very dedicated to his customers. My father was also dedicated to his community. He was dedicated to the Scouts, dedicated to his fire department, dedicated to his religion, and also dedicated to his family and his God, his wife, and his children. And I really kind of want to take two of these categories. One of which is his devotion, his dedication to his God and his family. And I look at all these things that he's done in the past of fire department, volunteering and volunteering in Scouts and also religion, and I can see that my father had decades of dedication. Decades. And he loved what he did. He loved the fire department. He loved his family. And he loves his God. And you know, with dedication is, you know, you set apart time for a worthy cause. You believe in something. Dedication, I see dedication as maybe there's effort there, a level of effort, and when you have long-term dedication, it shows something about a person. And when I think about my father, I here again, I think the dedication is not the correct word. And that's where I believe the devotion is more of a correct word. And that's where I ultimately wanted to come, is my father was devoted. My father was devoted in his family. And devotion is, you have a love, you have a loyalty for the cause. And his cause was his family, of course. His cause was his wife. And his cause was God. And that's why I believe that the devotion is more fitting for my father. And now I know that right now my father is devoted at this time, devoted to his cause and devoted to his purpose, devoted to his purpose in the life that he's in now, devoted to the community that he's in, and devoted to the people that he is around. And that is my father. I love him. And I thank him for everything that he's taught me. I only say these things in the name of Jesus Christ, man.
I actually don't have anything written on my paper. I was just going to stand up here and start crying and see how many I could take out with me. I mean, my mom for sure. Probably Danielle, Bryce, and Chris I could if I was selling him some Miss Kavanaugh's chocolates, but... I'm going to set all seriousness aside. My dad preferred it that way. One year for his birthday, I decided I was going to get him this really sweet card. Sentimental, put some really sweet sentimental stuff in it, tell him how much I loved him, how great he was, how much he meant to me, and probably some really cool gift. And so I gave it to him, and he read my card, and he was like, "What, no funny card?" I'm like, so after that, I never got my dad a serious card again. One of my most favorite traits about my dad, that is also one that about my own husband, is that he could fix anything. And if he didn't know how to fix it, he would figure it out. He's incredibly smart, an incredible keen mind, and it was always a trait that I wanted, that I loved so much about my dad, and I always wanted that in the person that I married. And I did. My dad was great at working with his hands, and after going through some of the funeral stuff for the funeral, and unfortunately reading some cards to my mom and dad, my mom thought so too. Word of advice, do not read your parents' cards, all right? Don't do it. It is incredibly damaging and a little bit scarring, almost as much as the Bum Bum story. And just don't do it. My dad loved doing service. His skills with tools and the love that he had for service, him almost got his fingers cut off. He was cutting some 2x4s, right, for a Relief Society thing on his table saw, and the next thing he knew, his fingers were bleeding. I'll spare you the gory details, but I will tell you that the doctor wasn't hopeful when he saw my dad's fingers. There's no doubt in my mind that there was some higher power with that surgeon that day. And my dad's fingers were spared. They definitely didn't look the same, but they still worked after that. was kind of cool. My dad loved to have a good time. When we were younger, we lived by some fields, and it attracted skunks, and we had a bunch of animals all the time, it seemed like. And when one of our animals would get strayed by a skunk, my dad and Chris would go out in Slimer with this green truck that we had that was crazy, and head out to the fields. And all I remember seeing, it seemed like it was always at night, but all I remember seeing is like the headlights from the truck all over the place in the field, and shotgun, firing guns, and it was so rednecky, but it was just like the best time. We would just sit, I would sit there and just watch it. It was hilarious. My dad never complained when it came to hauling us kids around for our activities. He was so excited when Danielle's senior year, she decided not to travel Shaw. No more 5 a.m. drive, 6 a.m. practices, until I decided to try out. And I wound up making the team that year, so my dad straight for like 5 years hauled me and Danielle up to Tooele every weekday morning to be to Sharon's by 6 a.m. Never once did I hear my dad complain. Once in a young women's program, they asked our dads to, I don't know if you remember this, remember? Describe us girls and as an animal, and tell why they thought that. My dad described me as a hummingbird. He said I was usually quiet until something bothered me, and then I wasn't anymore. If I were to turn the tables and describe my dad, I would relate him to a Clydesdale. Large in stature, big feet, requires extra grooming, and more expensive to keep. I'm just kidding. They're very handsome, easygoing, gentle giant, calm, collected demeanor, and very agile. They're incredibly intelligent, level-headed, strong, work hard and long, hardy even in the cold, dedicated and always serving. That is my dad. My dad is my hero. I was always so proud of him for being a firefighter. And at one point, that's what I wanted to do. When I talked to my dad about it, he recommended that I looked for a husband first. I did not take his advice, and I moved on to something else that I wanted to do. My dad is an amazing person. And this room full of people is a testament to that. Life is so different now that my dad's not here. There's definitely a huge void in this world where he used to be. We knew this day would be the outcome of his cancer, and we got 2 years with him after his diagnosis. But that 2 years went fast. I'm so very thankful for the time that we had with him. The last thing that I got to say to my dad was that I loved him. And he said it back. I just want to give a little advice. Always make sure that the last conversation you have with someone, the last words you want to remember saying to them. Don't miss an opportunity to tell your loved ones how much they mean to you. This life is so precious, and it's incredibly short. Make the most of it. And I say these things in the name of Jesus Christ, amen. Praise the Lord. Cancer sucks.
We will now have a musical number by all the grandchildren, a child's prayer. Afterwards, we'll have a speaker, Daniel Perez, the daughter, and which will be followed by Christopher Schofield. So,
So maybe you guys can guess, it's been kind of an emotional last couple of days, but you kids did really good, by the way. That was really excellent. We felt the spirit really strong. What a beautiful song. But it's also been a really lovely experience because not between last night and posts from Facebook and today, I heard some amazing things about my dad and some stuff that I didn't even know, and lovely to see like other people's experiences and the stories that they have with my dad. It's been great. We truly have felt all the prayers and the thoughts and the love from family and friends, and we have really felt that, and I'm so grateful for that and the support we've had. I was trying to just say Bryce and Summer did really good. I feel like they covered everything. But I do have some fun things that I remembered about my dad, and I guess me and Bryce are kind of on the same wavelength today, because when I was thinking of my dad's, like, words kept coming to my head. So I've chosen some words also that help me think of my dad, or very much remind me of my dad, that I wanted to share with you guys. And so the first thing that I have to say about my dad is that he was a hard worker, always, in addition to what my siblings have said about that. Hardest working man I have ever met, and he's spent his whole life, even up to just a short time before this, before he passed away, that he was so dedicated to work that he amazed me all the time because of that, and that he missed so little work. I don't even remember my dad ever being sick, which is kind of ironic, but it's true. And not only my dad would just do so good at his job, he was constantly working on other projects, whether it was with his callings, whether it was in our yard work, projects in his garage, or working on cars, which he seemed to help us a lot with, because I think that's our curse in this life, and he was so lucky to have us. He was really good at helping us with car problems. But so yeah, a hard worker, and that kind of leads me to the next word, which is what Bryce said, dedicated. My dad was so dedicated. Summer mentioned this, but my dad drove me up for a drill team practice before I turned 16, so it was at least a year and a half. Every single morning he would get up early, before he even had to be to work, to run me up there. No complaints whatsoever. Such a good example of my dad to do that, and it was kind of like good, because he got like one-on-one time with Dad in those early morning hours, and like that's such a strong example of dedication, because it didn't bother him one bit. And not only that, but he attended everything that us kids did that he could if he wasn't out of town for work. Every softball game we were in, every competition we attended, every dance halftime that we did, like Mom and Dad were always there. Mostly, I mean, Mom was there more because sometimes Dad would be out of town, but that dedication of always being there, very so dependable, and made it for very good memories. He's the same, not just for us, but like for my grandkids too, because of his grandkids too, because I know that him and my mom tried to go to every single recital softball game that they could make it to. And so that's beautiful memories for our grandkids too. The next word that kind of reminds me of, that definitely reminds me of my dad, Summer mentioned, which is he's so smart. My dad would constantly amaze me at how he understood mechanical workings, not just of machines, but it was of things in everyday life. It was like just the concept of understanding how things work together. Constantly amazing me about that, and I really liked that about my dad. He was inspiring that way. It was like a gift to him to understand how things work together. I remember him constantly fixing stuff as we were growing up all the time. Like our washer and dryers lasted, and our dishwashers lasted a really long time, because Dad was really good at fixing all those to make them, no matter what was wrong. It seemed like Dad could fix that. What a gift. Anything electrical around the house. There was one time when Bailey was really little. She was a baby. We lived in Holiday, and Mom and Dad came over for some reason. My mom and I were going to go run an errand real quick, so we asked my dad if he would just watch the little one for just a little bit while we ran into this errand. I don't even know where we were going, but I had mentioned, I don't remember if it was that day or before, that we were having problems with our thermostat. And so my mom and I leave and go and do our errand, and we come back, and as soon as I walked in, I was like, Dad, how did it go? I fixed your thermostat. Oh, it kind of like sums up my dad. Like, the kids were given, or Bailey was giving something to entertain her, so she was safe and having fun, and then my dad got to work fixing something. It was just, that's what he did. The next thing my dad, a word that reminds me of my dad is style, because my dad bought t-shirts everywhere he went. everywhere him and Mom went, every time he visited us and wherever we were living, or my dad had to buy a t-shirt. And then it wasn't like, he wasn't one of those people who bought the t-shirt and then hung it up, like, just to look at it once in a while. Like, he wore the shirts. So it was fun, because every time my dad wore a shirt from someplace we've been together, it was like memory lane. It was like, oh, I already got that shirt, Dad. And so that was one of the things that reminded me of my dad, his style. And I always remember growing up that my dad smelled good. So yes, Summer's right. My dad has, good hygiene, which is not a negative. And I remember the smells that he had growing up, and I think he even wore cologne even till, I can't remember the last time I smelled it, but growing up it was a very nostalgic smell and I loved it. And then I don't know if you guys checked out some of the pictures from the slideshow, but his beard was always styling, especially back in the day with the chops or the, whatever was in style. He was keeping up on that. That was really awesome about my dad. My dad was tender. He had a really soft spot for animals, and I feel like sometimes guys don't really like cats, but my dad loved cats and he loved dogs. He just loved animals. Like, I loved that about my dad, and that he showed like a tender side to him when it came to animals. It's a beautiful memory that I have of my dad. I love my dad so much. I'm grateful and I feel blessed that I was allowed to be his daughter in this life. And I know that right now he's really busy, or he will be really busy, and he's not far. I do look forward to the day that I get to see him again, and that I know I will see him again, and I am so grateful for that knowledge. And I'm grateful for all that he does for me in this life. And I say these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Good afternoon. Thank you for being here. We appreciate everyone coming, the kind words that many of you have shared about my dad. It's fun to hear stories and fun to hear the different comments that people have made about my dad. He was a good man. And I'm grateful for my siblings for sharing the stories that they did and the thoughts that they have. Although I don't know that I agree with Danielle on his, what did you say, good style? I don't know if he had good style. I remember a time when I was ironing shirts when I used to work for a bank, and I ironed my shirts the night before, and my dad asked me, will you iron these? And they were a pair of jeans. And I said, okay. And he said, make sure you put the creases in them, like dress pants. And I said, okay. And I ironed his jeans and put creases in them like dress pants, and I thought that was the nerdiest thing I'd ever seen. So I don't know about good style, but he did have some type of style. I remember Dad, he was either fixing something, he was making something, or we were driving something. I remember for many years we had the green truck, Slimer, that Summer mentioned earlier. Although I think he was driving the Crown Victoria through the field. I don't think he was driving, I'm pretty sure it was that sedan that he drove through the alfalfa field. It wasn't a truck. But yes, he was shooting at a skunk, and in the end he missed, and his last resort was to try and run over the skunk. And for the next 2 weeks, that car sat out in the far shed with its doors open because it smelled like a skunk. I was thinking Tuesday morning when I arrived at the hospital to spend time with Mom and Dad. He was on the 4th floor of the hospital, and I was just looking out the valley, and it's a beautiful Salt Lake Valley, and looking for some type of beacon of hope that I could look for just to kind of strengthen myself. And so the first thing you think of is the temple. Well, I couldn't see the Salt Lake Temple. The building in front of us was blocking it. I could see the mountains, and I could just barely see the edge of the Ochre Mountains and the smelter, and that wasn't quite a beacon, but as I was looking around, this light kind of, as crazy as it sounds, it's totally true, this light kind of shined over to the northwest, and kind of looked over that way, and it was the golden arches of the McDonald's sign further south. And Mom and Dad love to eat out, and it just reminded me that we all like to eat out. We enjoy spending time with each other at a restaurant or something like that. Not necessarily McDonald's, but that was probably 7th or 8th on the list. But it was just ironic that it would shine on McDonald's for my dad in that time of need for me. And then I was thinking about the words, I never thought this day would come. And as you grow up, you go through many events in life, whether for sorrow or for happiness, and you probably think, I thought this day would never come. And you get your driver's license, you graduate from high school, I thought this day would never come. Or you start junior high, and for me, I wish that day had never started. I hated junior high. And if you back up just even a few more years to before you were born, as you were standing above the tunnel to mortality, for lack of a better term, and right before the Lord said, all right, it's your time to go, you probably said, I thought this day would never come. And then as you go through life, you get married. I'm glad that day came, because I never thought that day would come. And then you have kids. I never thought that day would come. And then they potty train. And you're so happy that day came. And then you get promoted at work, or whatever events happen throughout life, and then a parent passes away. I thought this day would never come. And I always thought that I had time to do something. I was trying to fix the jukebox, just hoping that I could get it fixed before Dad passed away. I started kind of working on it a little more and stripping the paint that Mom put all over it. The 70s colored paint that it's a wonderful paint, but it's hard to get off. And I never got it done. And I think that's something to consider throughout life, that you think you have time, but you probably don't. Just a few stories about that. Having 6 people in the family, we usually had to purchase rather large vehicles. So the big sedan, the LTD Crown Victoria, the gold car I mentioned. We also had the Suburban, the blue Suburban. We had that for a lot of years, but right before that, I was standing in the driveway at the old house, and I saw this vehicle turn down from SR36 and start coming down the road. And that happened all the time. It wasn't really anything surprising, but as it approached, it started to slow down, and it was one of these big 15-passenger vans. And as it slowed down, it pulled into our driveway. And I said, Mom and I think it was bluish, Danielle thinks it was silver, it was some bluish something. But as it pulled up and stopped, I noticed Mom and Dad were driving this van. And this van was big enough to carry half the ward. And Dad gets out from the driver's side, and he pulls up his pants, like he does, and starts walking around the front, and kind of strutting a little bit. And I'm standing there going, holy cow, what is going on? And he said, I don't know if any of my siblings were there or not, but he asked, so what do you think? And I had already answered the question before he even asked it. And it was just a straight out no. And it was like we took a shovel and ripped his heart and soul out of him. Because I think he really liked that ugly thing. And he said, you know how he says, oh, everybody knows how he says that. And it was just that, and just that disappointment that we hated this thing. And it was probably one of the proudest things he was probably to test drive. And thankfully, He was, thankfully he listened to us, took the van back, and we bought the Suburban. And we had that Suburban for I don't know how many years, and I think he enjoyed that a lot more. And then the irony is that I was discussing with my wife, I don't know how many years ago, wouldn't it be cool to get one of those 15-passenger vans? You know, the kind that are kind of lifted a little bit, a rack on the top, and tinted windows. We have 7 of us, but still we could fit 3 more families in there and go on a trip. Now, as you get older, you kind of start thinking like your dad, and but I do not iron my jeans. I also remember a story. We went hunting a lot when I was younger. We went with Jim. We went with Mylan Chrisley. He went with us several times. I think we went with Uncle John. I went hunting with Shane a few times. And me and Dad and Mylan, we were up above Stockton. And the plan was to head up one of the canyons, and we would hike up to the top, and then I would go to the bottom of the canyon. Mylan and Dad would head up on the ridges on the sides. And it was my job to flush everything out. And Dad just told me, if you hear shots, just stop, don't keep going. I said, okay. So we're doing our little plan, and I'm walking down the bottom of this big canyon ravine. And all of a sudden I hear bang, and I stop and I look, and I knew Mylan was on my left and Dad was on my right, and it came from the left. And then I heard another shot, and another, and another, and I'm all, what's going on? So I looked up there, and I could see, I had my binoculars, I could see Mylan shooting at something, but it was bang, bang, 7, 8, 9, 10 times. I vaguely remember it stopping at 12, and as I'm watching Mylan, he finally just motions over to my dad with his finger. And so I go over looking at Dad, and he puts up the rifle, and bang! And that was it. And I thought, okay, so he must have missed. No, Dad hit it. One shot, Mike is what it was. And Mylan had buck fever so bad that he just couldn't hit that darn deer. And for a second there, I thought either that deer is just a moving around and we're blowing holes in it, or he's missing. And sure enough, he missed so many times, but Dad hit it with one shot. I played baseball, Little League some league baseball in Twilla years ago when I was a young teenager, and my dad, I had a problem hitting the ball, which is kind of why you play baseball. And I remember my coach telling me one time, telling the stats for all the players, here's your batting average for this season. So-and-so 238, so-and-so 312, and that, that's pretty good, but so-and-so 115, so-and-so whatever number. Chris Schofield, 0. And my batting average was, it wasn't that it was bad, it was the worst. It was the worst you could get. I had not hit a ball that whole season. And so Dad bought a baseball that was attached to a rope. And we would go out in the same field where those skunks resided. And he would take that, and it was about 10 feet of rope, plus a couple, give or take a couple of feet. And he would swing it around his head and get it flying. And then I'd stand there with the bat, and I'd just have to watch it. And after missing 3 or 4 times, I'd finally make a connection to it, and it would just, kind of not hit it too solid, so it would just go over the bat, and then Dad would just pick it up again, keep swinging. We did that for some time. I felt sorry for him when I really connected with that ball, because that ball either went right towards him